Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie McGrath, senior editor at Forbes. On Monday, two members of Donald Trump's campaign staff got in an altercation with an official at Arlington National Cemetery. The former president was in the cemetery to participate in a wreath-laying ceremony, but the event has become politicized. Here to explain her reaction to this event is Karen Meredith. She is a Gold Star mother whose son Kenneth is buried in the section of Arlington National Cemetery in which Trump was visiting. Karen, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
I want to start by asking about Section 60 of Arlington National Cemetery, because that is where this entire event took place. There was a wreath-laying ceremony to honor 13 fallen soldiers who were killed in Afghanistan in 2021. But there are certain rules around what people can and cannot do in this section. Can you explain what you know about this part of Arlington National Cemetery?
Yes, my son was killed 20 years ago, so I know the rules very well. The most important thing is that there is no politicization involved at all, ever. So you can go, you can take pictures. My family takes plenty of pictures when we go visit my son on the anniversary, but you cannot use it for political purposes. And I think that's one thing that the public didn't know, and it was very revealing.
So this wreath-laying ceremony, how often is it that government officials or former government officials, in this case, participate in official ceremonies in this part of Arlington?
Well, I'm not sure that that's really called an official ceremony, because anybody can go lay a wreath. Any organization, you could go, I could go. My son's father did it many years ago. So it may be called an official ceremony, but I don't think you only have to go through Arlington to make that request. So that wasn't unusual. As for public officials, probably I wouldn't even take a guess that why they would go or how they would go, unless a family invited them or unless they were honoring their former unit in the military. So I don't think that was unusual at all. And there was nothing wrong with him laying the wreath that day. That ceremony was fine.
The ceremony was fine, but where the conflict came in was around the photo and videoing of that wreath laying. How did it make you feel to see that pictures were being taken and videos were being taken of the wreath laying event with a former president and current presidential candidate?
Well, I don't have a problem with that at all. It was where they used the video. I believe they used that part of that as part of their political ad, their campaign ad. So I don't have a problem at all with the wreath laying. It was done they do that several times a day, and they stayed in bounds on all of the rules that applied to that. He was invited allegedly by the families, but there was nothing wrong with that. It was what happened at Section 60 that was the big problem.
And what makes Section 60 so different than the rest of the cemetery?
Well, Section 60 is where all of the recent casualties of war are buried from Afghanistan and Iraq. My son was killed 20 years ago, and he's in the second row of where all of that group is buried. It's been called the saddest acre in America, but it's different than all of the other 400,000 graves at Arlington, because it's a young area. You see children running around, children who may have never met their fathers. You see young 19-year-old widows. You see parents and grandparents. So it's a real family place. In fact, by my son, we have a Christmas tree, or a tree that we put Christmas ornaments on every year. So I think it bothers Arlington that we do that, but it's where our children are, where our families are, and that's what we make it.
It is what you make it. And I do believe some of the photos and videos have ended up on social media from former President Trump's visit, including TikTok. And there's some debate as to how those videos got on TikTok. Trump yesterday said that it was the Gold Star families who invited him that uploaded the footage. What do you make of that claim?
I believe that ad came from the Trump account, from what I had seen. Plus, there was I'm not sure what they call it in the industry, but the narrator was talking about the ending of the Afghanistan war. They were talking about, we didn't lose any people. It was narrated. The Gold Star families did not do that.
How does it make you feel as a Gold Star mother yourself to hear the former president make such allegations?
It makes me sick. I've been distraught all week. Going back to former President Trump's comments about John McCain was his first shot across the bow with how he feels about the military. Then all of the comments going further, when he attacked Captain Khan's father and mother when they appeared at the DNC, when he accused Gold Star families of giving him COVID when it was the day after the Amy Coney Barrett celebration. But he blamed the Gold Star families. When he called my son a sucker and a loser, when he wouldn't go to the World War I commemoration in France. It's just countless times. And he says he loves the military, but my son is not a sucker or a loser. My son was raised in an army, he was a fourth generation Army officer. So he loved the Army and he loved serving his country. In fact, one of the fears that he had going over there, he didn't fear going to war. He feared that he would not be able to take care of his guys. He was a young second lieutenant, and that was his biggest worry, is that he wanted to make sure, and every one of them came back. My son did not.
I am so sorry for your loss. And this week must have been so hard to see everything in the headlines and the constant talk about it. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is former President Trump has said he was there to honor the 13 fallen soldiers who were killed in Afghanistan in 2021. And he and his running mate, J.D. Vance, have accused President Biden and Vice President Harris as being responsible for the deaths of those 13 soldiers. What do you make of that accusation? Do you think it is fair for him to say that the responsibility for the deaths of these 13 service members lies at the feet of the current administration?
No, I do not. This was an exit plan that was negotiated by former President Trump, and President Biden was executing it. It was never going to be a good exit, regardless of who executed the whole plan. It fell apart at the last minute when we were the Iraq or the Afghanistan officials just abandoned the country. So no, it was Trump's plan, and we were trying to accomplish what he had put forth. So no, it was they should not blame them. With the families, I kind of understand when you're in deep mourning and deep grief, it's easy to reach out and find an easy target. And of course, they're encouraged to. I try not to judge other Gold Star families, because when you're grieving something like that, an unexpected death, you have to grieve whatever can get you through the day. If you can get out of bed in the morning, then I think good for you. But I just think that this is a point that keeps being hammered by the Republicans, but it's just not true.
Do you blame former President Bush for the loss of your son?
I do. That has been, proven that there were no weapons of mass destruction. Yes, there were no. It seemed like every 2 weeks they changed the mission. We're going into installed democracy. We're going into, there was so many reasons, and I was very much against the war before it started, before my son was even involved. But yes, I do blame President Bush, but I think that has been proven. I will give the current Gold Star families, if they can find other evidence, then I'll change my mind. But at this point, it does not look that it was the fault of the current administration.
Now, you mentioned, we've been talking about Section 60, and you yourself, your family, will take photographs of the gravesite for your son. Do you upload those to social media, and do you think that social media platforms like TikTok should allow these photos? Because that's the other piece of this story here, right? There were photos and videos taken, uploaded to TikTok. Should the social media sites that exist employ moderation so those photos and videos don't get widely distributed?
Of course I post pictures. This Memorial Day, my son was killed on Memorial Day, so we were there. We had 35 people there. Of course, I love to look at it, that my son's, not legacy, but his influence in life spread that far. And so, yes, of course I do. But I am not using it for political reasons at all. My son has a Facebook page, and they get posted there. I post it on my personal page, but there is no political comment. And if the social media companies were to invoke some kind of rule, it would be easy enough. If you're doing a campaign ad, no. If you're doing it for your family, yes. And you cannot, say, now vote for President X and Y or whoever. You just can't do that. So no, because Section 60 is so different, I can't imagine going to Grandpa's grave in Section 3 or 30 that there's going to be a whole lot of people there. But if there were, it would be nice to document the family visiting somebody who was killed in World War II. Unfortunately, a lot of the families lose touch or they die, and they don't get visitors. But that's one of the things that's so different about Section 60. It's very active.
It's active. The deaths are so recent and the families are so young. You make such an interesting distinction here, because I think a lot of the initial headlines were about the photo and the video aspect in Section 60, but in your view, it's not the photos that are the problem, it's the use of those photos in a political context.
Yes, exactly.
Is there anything else that's been on your mind this week? As I said, I know it's been a tough week with this being in the headlines, but is there anything else you want the Forbes audience to understand about Section 60 and your son and the other families that visit there?
Yes, I would like to address the altercation for a second. I have been to my son's grave dozens and dozens of times. Mostly it's on Memorial Day, so it's very busy that day. Many times I'm there by myself, so it's much quieter. But there has never, ever been a day that there has been any hint of violence. The fact that anybody thought that that was okay appalls me. That is such a solemn, hallowed ground that was somebody's first instinct, was to push back on somebody who was doing their job. And I'm just speechless about it. It just hurts my heart that somebody thinks that, and in that point, they had a mission to accomplish to get their film, their video, so that they could use it for other purposes. And it wasn't for the family. I'm sure the family got some of the pictures and that was fine, but it was, as you said, it was for the use. So I just want people to know, if you haven't visited Section 60 and you're in DC, it is a different place. One of my Gold Star friends whose son is not buried there, I don't like Arlington. It's just there's too many dead people. And I said, but look at this place. It's so great. And one of the reasons that I chose to have my son buried at Arlington, that is a choice that the military gives us, I live in California, is that I knew that if any of his returning battle buddies were in Washington, D.C., that they might be able to visit him. So every now and then I get this surprise picture in either on Facebook or an email saying, I visited Ken today. I just wanted you to know. Some of them are people I've never heard of. In fact, one of the visitors of our 35 this year was a young man from Missouri who flew in to Washington, D.C. He knew my son for 6 weeks in Iraq. So the relationships that they form in war are different than anything you or I will ever know. So go visit Section 60. Go find out where this travesty happened the other day. But leave that behind and understand the sacrifice that lays there. And look at the dates on the headstones to see how young this generation of casualties of war were.
Karen, Meredith, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.